My name is Ruth Coleman. I'm 63, and I live in a narrow row house in North Philly that's been in my family long enough for the porch to remember names. I used to keep a little bell by the door of my kitchen, the kind that jingles when somebody comes in. Now the bell mostly collects dust because the only footsteps I hear are the ones that belong to the neighborhood. Kids running to catch buses, Mr. Alvarez down the block sweeping in the morning. When I sleep at night, I sometimes wake up waiting for a knock that will never come. People call my house modest, but to me it's full of years. Old paint that never quite matches, a window that sticks in the summer, a shelf of clippings in a shoebox that weighs more than any of my other boxes. Those clippings are what I keep now. Gallery openings, photos of my daughter standing by her canvas, little write-ups someone clipped from the Inquirer or taped from a magazine. I read them the way some people read prayer books, reverently with a careful fingertip tracing the edges. I say her name like it's a soft thing I don't want to scare. Harper. Harper was a little thing with paint on her elbows when she was 7, running a brush across scrap wood like it was a secret language. She would stand barefoot on the porch and say things like, "Mama, the sky wants purple today," and I would laugh and hand her another rag to wipe her hands. When she said she wanted to go to art school, real art school, the kind with studios and critiques and a name on a diploma that might open doors, I believed it wasn't a fantasy. I believed in her the way mothers believe before facts get in the way. So I stitched and saved. I worked overtime at the community clinic folding bandages and driving patients to appointments, and then, when my knees ached louder than the bank account, I took another shift. I sold things I loved. A lamp my grandmother had carved, my wedding china set, the little silver sugar bowl that reminded me of the Christmases when my husband was still alive. I paid her tuition. I paid her rent once she moved to the city for school. I bought her paints and the expensive brushes the instructors recommended. I watched, proud and a little breathless, as she got scholarships and won an internship and then her first solo show. The first clip went into the box grew. I learned all the hip names of galleries like they were foreign cities I'd never visit. My friends would tell me to stop clipping, to stop making a shrine out of other people's pages, but I couldn't help it. Those clippings were proof that the fever I had for her years ago had not been wasted. Then, as things will, success changed the coordinates of our lives. Harper's shows started attracting people who carried cards and business plans. She began traveling, residencies in cities with names that sounded cinematic, little apartments across the river that she told me were tiny and so worth it. On the phone she would say, "Mama, I'll come by next month," and I'd hang up and plan a day around that call. I'd bake because baking is the way I show love. I'd save my breath for the moment I would open the door and surprise her with a pie. First real silence came slow. The phone would ring and it wouldn't be her. Or I'd call and the number would be out of service and they'd say, "She's traveling, try again later." I understood how careers pull you thin. Artists get busy. They get swallowed by schedules and deadlines and new commissions. I told myself that. I believed in her talent enough to believe in her absence. But there were small things that began to thorn me. An RSVP that never came, a show she mentioned and then didn't bring me a clipping from, an Instagram post that had 100 comments and no small line, "Mama saw the photos." Those little omissions stacked like old boxes. One winter morning, when the gutters kept cough singing and the heater in the front room sounded like a tired beast, I found something that should have been a joke on a cruel morning, a gallery card with my name on it, folded and tucked behind an old cookbook. It was a card from a private collector, warm embossed letters, her name, the date. After the show the week before. The date was there and no one had thought to bring me, not even a text. I held that small card until the ink blurred. I didn't scream. I sighed, the tired, slow exhale of a woman who felt the rope being pulled somewhere she couldn't see. After that card, Harper's visits dwindled further. I heard she'd been at a residency in Berlin and then a month later at a biennale in Miami. Her name started to appear in the same articles as the collectors and the critics. People I barely recognized would come through my door every now and then, a look of curiosity in their eyes, asking if I was Harper's mother. They would smile at my kitchen like it had been a stage set for a life they'd only read about. They would say, "She's incredible," and then leave my house like I was part of the background, which, for all I cared, I might as well have been. The first time I tried to call her direct number and it didn't ring, I didn't panic. I left a message. "Hi baby, it's Mama. I made your lemon cake. Call me when you can." I waited. Then days passed. Then weeks. Then a birthday came and went, and there was nothing but a few polite comments under her post. I watched a woman I had brought into the world pivot into a constellation of followers and patrons, and I felt, what? Proud, yes. But also like an old photograph that had been left in the sun too long, colors fading where touching mattered. There are moments in the dark when you go back to how love is first taught, in hands and gestures. I would sit at the kitchen table with gallery clippings and trace a line under the words like they were scripture. Once, when the house creaked from the cold outside, I dialed a number I hadn't used in years, her old studio line, and a voice answered that wasn't hers. "This line is no longer in service," it said. And the mechanical voice felt like an answer meant for me personally, out of service, out of reach. I began to ask people. A neighbor who ran a daycare told me she'd seen Harper at a fundraiser for emerging artists but had left early. A barista in a coffee shop a few blocks over said they'd seen Harper in the window once and she looked rushed and was with a woman who wore a blazer that cost more than my rent. Facts collect like breadcrumbs, and I followed them the way you follow an old path that leads back to a house you used to know intimately. Each breadcrumb felt like a small betrayal. Then one afternoon, a delivery man came with a package for me, a framed clipping, glossy, from a magazine I'd never buy. He set it gently on my table like it was the Holy Grail. It was a spread from an opening in Soho. My daughter, in full light, standing in front of a canvas and smiling at the camera. The caption read, "Harper Lane, the voice of a new generation." Someone had thought to send it to me. I called the number on the card of the sender out of curiosity. Connected me to a PR coordinator who, kindly and professionally, explained they'd sent copies to family members on file. I asked, a little sharp, why wasn't I invited? Her kindness faltered for a beat. "Mrs. Coleman, her team sends invitations to close contacts," she said. "We must have an outdated list." Dated. Like I was an entry that had aged past relevance. That was the first time I understood fully that distance isn't always accidental. You can move away from someone by geography, and you can move away with a slip of the thumb on a phone that changes numbers and a new assistant who filters calls. Even worse, you can be moved out of a life by convenience. I felt the air leave the room then, like someone had switched off the heat. I sat in my kitchen, the clippings spread before me, and I started to write. Writing is how I heal. I wrote letters at first. Old-fashioned, slow, the kind you seal in an envelope and post with careful stamps. I'd pour tea, light a candle, and fold the paper as if the act itself might press some warmth back into a name. "My dearest Harper," I'd write. "Mama is proud. Come home when you can." I sent a few, and they came back marked return to sender or simply never returned my calls. I began to understand that the silence was deliberate, clinical almost. But this is not only a story about abandonment. It's the moment when abandonment curdles into something meaner, a thing that awakens a different part of me. I had made choices for Harper. I had funded her school and sacrificed for her art because I believed in her gift. I had believed that art would be the bridge between the child I loved and the life she wanted. What I did not expect was that those very investments would one day be used as currency to buy distance. She had climbed. I had stayed. I could have stayed small and bitter, kept my head down and watched clippings with a steady ache. But I had never been someone who merely watched things vanish. You know that old saying, silence speaks louder than words? Well, I used to think silence was peace. I thought Harper's quiet meant she was focused, working, living the dream I'd helped her build. But I was wrong. Silence, my dear, is a language, and hers started sounding a lot like shame. It was late spring when the truth began to trickle in. You ever get that feeling in your chest, that buzz, that whisper that tells you something's off? I had it for weeks. I couldn't sleep. I'd wake up to the refrigerator hum and swear I heard her voice in it. I'd open the window, listen to the city at night, and feel that pull, the one that says you're being lied to. Now listen, if you're still watching, make sure you hit that like button because what I'm about to tell you, it's the kind of revelation that turns love into something else entirely. One evening, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. I searched her name online. I don't know why that night felt different, but it did. Maybe because I'd seen her face earlier on a billboard downtown. Yeah, my baby, smiling above traffic like a stranger's dream. I came home, sat down with my old laptop, typed her name into Google. Harper Lane. Just like that. The screen lit up with pages, gallery reviews, interviews, pictures from events. And then one article stopped me cold. The headline read, "From hardship to high society, Harper Lane's rise from nowhere to notoriety." From nowhere. That word hit me like a slap. I clicked it open. The story started soft, about her unique voice, her raw emotion, her brushstrokes that spoke of struggle. And then came the part that burned. Raised by a distant aunt after losing both parents young, Harper Lane turned her pain into beauty. My mouth went dry. Both parents. Lost. A distant aunt. I read it again, slow this time, tracing each word with my trembling finger. Distant aunt? She was talking about me, her mother, like I was some shadow she'd half forgotten, some ghost who mailed checks from the other side of memory. You ever have your heart break so quietly that it feels like breathing stops but the world doesn't notice? That was me, sitting at that kitchen table, the light above me flickering like it couldn't handle what it was seeing either. She'd rewritten me out of her story. I didn't cry right away. I just sat there, letting the hurt stretch across my chest until it started feeling like armor instead of pain. Then I printed the article, folded it carefully, and put it right on top of the old shoebox with all her clippings. I stared at that box like it was a grave, a place where love went to rest. That night I didn't sleep. I started pacing. I called her number again, knowing full well it wouldn't go through. Then I called the gallery listed in the article. Some assistant picked up, bright voice too cheerful. "Good evening, this is Harper Lane's studio office." "This is her mother," I said. My own voice startled me, steady, cold. "Can you tell her to call me back?" There was a pause. "I'm sorry, who did you say?" "Her mother, Ruth Coleman." Another pause, shorter this time, but heavy. I'll make sure she gets the message." She didn't. Of course she didn't. 2 weeks later I got a letter. Not handwritten, typed clean on letterhead from a law firm in New York. "Dear Mrs. Coleman," it began. "Ms. Harper Lane wishes to express her gratitude for your support throughout her early career. However, she requests that all personal correspondence and contact attempts be directed through her representation moving forward." It was so formal it could have been written by a stranger. No, Mama. No love, Harper. Just cold ink on white paper like she was cutting me out with a scalpel. I sat there reading that letter over and over thinking, this can't be my child. This can't be the same little girl who used to leave paint fingerprints on the walls and cry when I scraped my knees. This can't be the same voice that once whispered, Mama, don't ever let go of me. And then I saw it, the name at the bottom of the letter. Signed Harper Lane. No middle name. No Coleman. She'd erased even that. If you're still with me, stay. Because I promise, the twist coming next, it's the kind that changes the way you see everything before it. Weeks passed, and I started keeping track. Every little breadcrumb that fell from her world into mine. Photos from red carpets. Video clips of interviews. Even her Instagram posts, I'd watch her smiling with people whose names I didn't know, whose eyes didn't look kind. But one picture, that one took the air right out of my lungs. It was a photo from an art gala in Manhattan. Harper standing beside a man, much older, dressed in a suit that looked too expensive to be kind. His hand was on her back. The caption read, "With my mentor and partner, Charles Ellington." That name, it rang a bell. I went back through the article clippings. And there he was, the gallery developer who had helped discover her. The same man who'd been quoted saying, Harper's story of struggle inspired me to invest in her vision. I felt it then. That twist of intuition. That quiet, mean voice that whispers, he's not just her mentor. I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't shake the thought. So I did something desperate. Something maybe I shouldn't have done. I called one of my old patients from the clinic, a woman whose niece worked at a magazine. I asked her to look into it quiet-like. I said I just needed to know if my daughter was okay. A week later, she called me back. Her voice was careful, like she was stepping through glass. Ruth, I don't know how to tell you this, but she's been living with him. With him, I repeated. Yeah. In his penthouse in Tribeca. The rumor is they're more than business partners. She's with him. I didn't say a word. I just stared out the window at the rain hitting the glass. My hand went to the letters, the ones I'd written and never sent. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. Because deep down, it wasn't even the affair that broke me. It was what it meant. It meant that she had traded everything I gave her, every sacrifice, every night I worked till my back gave out, for someone who could give her more. She didn't just leave me behind. She replaced me. That's when something in me shifted. You ever reach that point where grief burns so hot it turns into something else? Colder, clearer? That's where I was. I wasn't just sad anymore. I was awake. I started to see patterns. How she'd taken my name off her website. How she told interviewers that her parents had died young. How she'd built her whole tragic backstory on a lie that made her seem more romantic, more sellable. The orphan artist, rising from pain into brilliance. That's what they wanted. That's what she gave them. And me? I was collateral damage. After that night, the night I learned my daughter had rewritten me into a footnote and was living in luxury with that man, I didn't sleep for days. I'd lie awake with the TV on low, watching the shadows crawl across my living room wall. I'd stare at those clippings in the shoebox, feeling the heat of betrayal in my chest. First, I wanted to write her one last letter. A goodbye. Something that said, you broke me, but I still love you. But when I picked up the pen, my hand wouldn't move. Because the truth hit me, she didn't deserve my goodbye. Not yet. You know what I did instead? I started watching her. Quietly. Carefully. If you're still here, make sure you hit that like button because this is where the story starts twisting into something different, where the mother you thought you knew starts playing the game her daughter thought she owned. I made a fake account, something simple. No photo, just a name, art lover from Philly. I started following her page, her friends, her galleries. I studied every post, every caption. And that's when I started to see it. Little cracks in the stories she'd built. She'd post about humble beginnings but never say where. She'd talk about learning resilience but never mention me. And in the background of her perfect photos, behind the champagne glasses, the fancy gowns, I saw the same faces over and over. One of them was Charles Ellington. The other was a woman I didn't recognize at first, tall, blonde, too polished to be kind. Then one night, Harper posted a photo of her newest painting, a big, abstract piece she called The Silence That Raised Me. The caption said, "Dedicated to the woman who gave me nothing and taught me everything." I laughed, not the kind of laugh that means joy. Kind that sounds like something breaking inside you. That was the moment I knew. If she was going to turn me into a ghost, then I'd haunt her. Started small. I wrote to that same journalist who'd printed her tragic backstory. I pretended to be an old friend from Harper's past. I told her I had a few facts wrong in that piece you did about her childhood. I didn't accuse. I hinted. I let curiosity do the rest. A week later, that journalist called me, nervous but intrigued. I could hear the city behind her, the buzz of New York traffic. "Miss, you said you knew Harper when she was young?" "I did," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Knew her before she started telling stories that weren't hers." She asked for proof. So I sent it. Photos of Harper as a child standing in front of the old row house. School certificates with my name listed as mother. A faded art scholarship letter I'd kept all these years. I didn't tell her everything, just enough to make her question the lie. 2 weeks later I saw it, a small blog post buried in the corner of an art site. The headline read, "The Untold Origins of Harper Lane." Didn't accuse her, but it asked questions, the right ones. Did Harper Lane reinvent her past for the art world? It wasn't explosive. Not yet. But the seed had been planted. And seeds, my dear, have a way of growing when you water them with patience. After that, I started watching interviews again. She looked tired. Beautiful still, but there was something behind her smile, something tight, anxious. Maybe she'd seen the blog post. Maybe someone had whispered that her dead mother was alive and asking questions. Then one night my phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got me. "Hello?" Silence. Then, "Mama." That voice. My heart stopped. "Harper." She exhaled hard. "Why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" I asked, pretending innocence. "You talked to the press." I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. "You told them I was dead." "It's artistic narrative," she snapped. "People don't care about reality, Mama. They care about the story." "Well," I said softly, "now they have one." She hung up. Just like that. But that call told me something important. I'd gotten under her skin. She was scared. Maybe not of me, but of what I knew. So I went further. I started writing letters again, but not to her. To him, Charles Ellington. I wrote as an anonymous source, hinting that I knew things about Harper's past that could affect his reputation and financial interests. I mailed them to his gallery and signed. Just enough truth to sound dangerous, just enough mystery to make him question her. And it worked.
A month later, gossip sites started whispering about a rift between Harper Lane and her benefactor. I saw a photo of her leaving an event alone, no hand on her back this time, no glass of champagne. Her face looked different. Vulnerable. Human. That's when I realized I wasn't doing this out of anger anymore. I was doing it to wake her up. To make her see that the truth she buried was the only thing that could save her. But she didn't come home. She didn't call. So I decided to make the truth public, all of it. If you're still watching, keep that finger ready on the like button because this next part, it's where everything snaps into place. Where a mother's quiet revenge becomes something no one saw coming. I started an art blog. Nothing fancy, just stories about unknown artists from working-class neighborhoods. I wrote under the name R.C. Lane, initials that looked familiar enough to make people curious. I wrote about hardship, sacrifice, the cost of creation. And one post, titled "The Mother of the Forgotten Artist," went viral. I never used her name. Not once. But people knew. The details were too close. The internet did what it always does, connected the dots. Comments flooded her pages. Is this about you, Harper? Why did you lie? Where's your real mother? And just like that, the facade cracked. She issued a statement, all polished words and PR gloss, about artistic freedom and metaphorical storytelling. But by then, it didn't matter. The world had seen her mask slip. And me? I didn't feel triumph. I felt peace. 'Cause sometimes revenge isn't about destruction. It's about balance. That was the moment I put away the shoebox. For the first time, I didn't feel like I had to keep proof anymore. The world finally knew what I'd always known, who she really was and who I'd been all along. It started the week after that blog post went viral. I was folding laundry when my neighbor's granddaughter came running up my porch with her phone in her hand. "Miss Ruth, you seen this?" she said, eyes wide. There was a video, Harper leaving a gallery opening. Porters shouting questions. Flashes of light. One voice called out, "Is it true you lied about your mother's death?" She didn't answer. She just ducked her head and kept walking. But the silence, it said everything. I set the laundry aside and watched that clip again. My heart was beating like I'd just run up the church steps. I didn't feel proud, not exactly. It was something heavier, relief maybe. Justice wearing grief's clothes. If you're still here with me, go ahead and tap that like button because what happens next, even I couldn't have planned it this perfectly. Within a week, the gossip became headlines. Art stars past questioned. Who is Harper Lane's real family? Some sites used photos I didn't even remember taking. Old pictures from our row house porch, my baby in pigtails, paint on her cheeks. They dug through school archives, city records, scholarship lists. It was all out there now, her real name, her real story, my name. First, I thought she'd issue an apology. Maybe she'd say she got caught up, that fame confused her. But no. She doubled down. Her agent released a statement calling it a creative misunderstanding that just poured gasoline on the fire. Collectors started backing away. The art world loves a tragedy, but not when it looks dishonest. Then came the call I'd been waiting for. "Mrs. Coleman? This is Jordan from Channel 6 News. We'd love to speak with you about your daughter's story. Would you?" "No interviews," I said quickly. "I'm not here to ruin her life." He hesitated. "But ma'am, people deserve to hear your side." I sighed. "They already are. They just don't know it." I hung up. Because revenge for me wasn't about being seen, it was about her seeing me. But the universe has its own sense of timing. About a month later, I got a letter. Not typed. Handwritten. The return address was New York. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. The handwriting was messy, rushed, hers. Mama, it started. I don't even know where to begin. Everything's falling apart. Charles dropped me. My gallery suspended my next show. I told one lie to make my story cleaner, and now it's choking me. I didn't mean to erase you. I thought people wouldn't care about the truth. I'm sorry. Please, can we talk? For a long moment I just sat there, letting the paper tremble in my hands. Part of me wanted to tear it up. Another part wanted to hold her and say, "Baby, you're home." But revenge doesn't always end where forgiveness begins. Sometimes it keeps walking a few more steps before it turns around. A week later, she showed up at my door. No cameras. No entourage. Just Harper, hair pulled back, face bare, eyes tired. She stood there like a stranger asking for directions. "Mama," she whispered. For a second, I couldn't move. Then I stepped aside. She walked in slowly, looking around the kitchen like she was walking through memory itself. The same chipped counters, the same clock ticking too loud. "You still got that bell," she said softly. "Never saw a reason to take it down," I answered. We sat at the table, just the two of us. The silence stretched long enough to hear the old heater clank. "I messed up," she said finally. I thought success would make it easier to forget where I came from. But every time I lied, it got heavier. I told myself I'd fix it one day, that you'd understand. Understand what? I asked quietly. That my own daughter buried me alive in her story so she could look more tragic? She winced. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I leaned forward. You wanted to be special. You wanted them to feel sorry for you. But you didn't need pity, Harper. You needed truth. She nodded, tears sliding down her face. I know. I watched her for a while, that proud woman who'd turned her pain into art, now small again in my kitchen. And for the first time in years I saw her, not the famous Harper Lane, but the little girl who used to paint the sky purple because blue felt too ordinary. I got up, went to the cupboard, and pulled out the shoebox. Set it on the table. This, I said, is what you tried to erase. She opened it slowly, old clippings, report cards, photos. Each one a memory she'd traded for applause. I kept every piece, I said. Even when you stopped writing. Even when you changed your number. Because a mother's memory doesn't obey a delete button. She covered her face with her hands. I'm so sorry, Mama. I'll fix this. I'll tell everyone the truth. I shook my head. Don't tell them for me. Tell them for you. 'Cause lies rot you from the inside, baby. And you deserve better than that. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the hum of the fridge, the faint buzz of the street outside. Then she said something I didn't expect. Would you come to my next show? I'm redoing it. New pieces. No PR team. Just truth. I looked at her, the same eyes that once begged for art supplies, the same hands that once reached for mine. If it's truth you're showing, I'll be there. And I meant it. If you're still here, sweetheart, hit that subscribe button because what happened next was the kind of full-circle moment life rarely gives. 3 months later, I stood in a small gallery in Philadelphia. Not New York, not LA, just home. The walls were bare except for a single painting, a portrait of a woman in a kitchen, hands folded over a stack of letters, eyes tired but kind. The title read Mother Unframed. When Harper saw me walk in, she froze. Crowd parted. She walked over and in front of everyone said, "This is my mother, Ruth Coleman." The real story starts with her. The applause that followed wasn't for fame. It was for honesty. I didn't cry until I got home. Not from sadness, from release. Kind that makes your shoulders drop after years of carrying something heavy. Because here's the thing about revenge. It's not always about hurting someone back. Sometimes it's about making them see what they broke and giving them a chance to fix it. That night, as I sat with a cup of tea, I thought about how full circle life can be. Harper had her truth back and I had my peace. The shoebox still sits on the shelf, but I don't open it much anymore. Past doesn't need proof when it's finally been acknowledged. So if you've listened this far, thank you. Remember this, the loudest revenge isn't destruction. It's dignity. Sometimes silence isn't pain, it's power. And if you know someone who's ever made you feel invisible, don't waste your light trying to burn them back. Just stand where you belong, in the truth. That's where people finally see you. It had been a few months since Harper's show. People stopped calling. The news cycle moved on. The world found a new scandal to chase. But for me, life was simple again. I was back in my row house, the same creaky floors, the same chipped coffee cup, the same soft radio hum. Except something had changed. The air didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt honest. That's the funny thing about revenge. You think it's about getting even, about showing them what they did to you. But somewhere along the way, it changes shape. Stops being about them and starts being about you. About reclaiming your story, your voice, your worth. You see, for years I lived with a ghost. Not the kind that rattles chains, but the kind that smiles from magazine covers and pretends you never existed. That silence, it eats at you. Makes you question if you ever mattered in the first place. But the truth is, love doesn't disappear just because someone stops saying your name. It sits quietly, waiting for you to say it yourself. The first time I saw Harper again after the gallery, she came over for dinner. Just the two of us. She brought a small plant, said she didn't know what kind it was, only that it looked like it belonged in a home. I put it on the window ledge, right beside my little bell. We didn't talk much that night. Just ate, laughed softly about old times, and let the silence between us feel safe again. And when she left, she hugged me longer than she had in years. I could feel her shaking a little, like she was still scared I'd disappear if she let go. But I didn't. I'm still here. I always was. I thought my daughter's betrayal was the end of my story. Turns out it was the middle, the place where I stopped letting other people narrate who I was. And to anyone listening who's ever given everything, your time, your money, your heart, only to be left behind, I want you to hear this from me. You are not a stepping stone in somebody else's success. You are the foundation they were lucky to stand on. And even if they forget you, the truth doesn't. Some nights, I still get letters addressed to Harper Lane's mother. People who saw the video of her apology or read her new interviews where she talks about me now by name with pride. Some of them thank me. Some tell me they called their own moms after watching. And every single one of those messages feels like a tiny light flicking on in the dark. Because maybe that's what my story was really for. Not revenge, not redemption, but reminder. That love and truth always find their way home, even if they have to crawl through years of silence to get there. You know, sometimes I go to that little gallery in Philly. They kept her painting there, the one titled Mother Unframed. I stand in front of it, pretending I'm just another visitor, and I watch strangers stare at it. They don't know who I am, and I like it that way. They look at that woman on the canvas, the tired eyes, the gentle smile, and they see strength, not sadness. And that's when I realize my revenge wasn't making her fall. It was reminding her where she came from. It was teaching her that truth is the only art that lasts. Before I go, let me leave you with this. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means you've decided to stop living in someone else's mistake. You can love people and still hold them accountable. You can let go without letting them off the hook. That balance, that's power. So if you're sitting there tonight with a broken heart or a betrayal that still stings, don't rush to destroy. Rebuild. Quietly. Let your peace be the thing that haunts them. Let your success, your joy, your calm be the echo they can't silence. And one day you'll wake up, sunlight spilling across your kitchen, and you'll realize you're free. Not because they said sorry, not because they paid for what they did, but because you stopped needing them to. That's the kind of revenge that lasts. So thank you for listening to my story. If it touched something in you, if it reminded you of your own strength, go ahead and subscribe. Not for me, but for the stories we're still brave enough to tell. Because somewhere out there, another mother is sitting by her window, holding a letter that never got a reply. And maybe she needs to hear that it's not the end, just the start of a quieter, stronger chapter. I'm Ruth Coleman, and this was my silent goodbye.